Okay, the Bible says in Luke chapter 14:28, for which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? This month, we celebrate 9 years of opening a business in Adelaide, my wife and myself. So I'm a pastor slash CEO slash business owner, but I am married to the boss. I know the pecking order. And what happened is we were both in ministry, and I was pastoring, and my wife was working for the government at the time. We both had a background in community care, disabled care, aged care, dementia. And I knew that I had a lot of pressure from my pastor at the time to get my wife out of working, which was really unusual. And so what happened is I said, honey, why don't we just start a business? What are you interested in doing? So we started this little business. It was meant to be a small business on the side for my wife. And I mean, really little. It's just something as a hobby thing. I was pastoring full-time at the moment. 9 years later, I'm no longer full-time pastoring. I am pastoring with Pastor Jeff in his church. But we now have a company that has 600 plus workers. We have 8 offices across. We have 8 offices. And one of them's interstate. We have quite a few offices around. And we started a second business in the month of January, and that's about to really turn around and pay its way. And so God has just really blessed us. But you got to remember, this was started as a little business for my wife. And so now here we are years later, and I find myself, I chuckle and say, oh yes, Pastor Jeff's ministering out there. He's saying he's a CEO of a large company, and I know who I am. And so, but I want to encourage you about business, creating a business that glorifies God. Firstly, speak to you about connecting God and business. God created you and I to work, and it's only natural that we identify ourselves and how we spend most of our waking hours. So when you talk to most people, you say, hi, I'm Scott, and you say, well, I'm Joe, and we talk about what we do. Yeah. We talk about our living, what we do, and while mankind rebellion against God's rule makes work frustrating, work is very good. And if you don't have a job, you need to get one. Yeah. And so let's just lay that out there. But there is something that has gone wrong along the way because we base solely our identity on our work, and it can become the ruling passion of our lives. And if we're not careful, especially as entrepreneurs, we can make an idol out of work. And when we make an idol out of work, we begin to usurp the rightful place that God has in the center of our lives. And if you're going to be successful as a Christian entrepreneur, you better keep God first. And you need to do that right up front. Because when we worship our work, not only does that dishonor God and scar our character, it serves to advance greed and corruption in the world of commerce, and it compromises the inherent goodness of business to create human flourishing. And as a result, a growing number of people doubt the beneficial nature of Christian business to society. And for years, for centuries, there's been a question mark over can you be a Christian and own a company and be wealthy? Well, I'm here to give you good news, you can. Amen. But listen to the background of this, because some people are still affected by this. The church father, Saint Jerome, is not my spiritual father. He said, a merchant can seldom, if ever, please God. St. Augustine, who a lot of preachers quote, said business in itself is evil. And unfortunately, many people agree. And rarely is business honored as a legitimate way to serve God. At best, it is ignored or portrayed as a second-class work in God's kingdom. When you say, I'm a businessman, it's like, oh, okay, you're just in it for the money. You say, I'm a pastor, you say, oh, you must be broke. Isn't that true? Okay. And so that's how, but we think that the pastor is more spiritual because he's broke, and the businessman is less spiritual because he's wealthy. Listen to this. You should write this down. If you're going to be successful, whether it be in ministry and business, you need, number one, common sense. Now, I don't know why they call it common sense. It's not common. Number two, you need business sense. And number three, you need spiritual sense. And those three, whether you're in ministry or in business, are very important. In his book, Business for the Glory of God, Wayne Grundam points out when people ask how their lives can glorify God, they are not usually told, go into business. Yet, business is where God calls many people to go. Not everyone can pastor. And so what else can we do? We can be spiritual entrepreneurs in business, and as Christians, through our business, we can glorify God. Here's a foundation. Abraham was a successful businessman in the cattle and sheep and goat industry of his time. In fact, there's so much livestock, him and Lot had to separate. In Genesis 13:2, Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. Verse 8. So Abraham said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. So at some point in his business, it expanded so much, he said, Lot, there's too much friction in the competition. You need to find your own territory. You need to go find your own city. You need to go do business elsewhere because there's too much going on. And we know that Abraham's business continued to grow. It says in Genesis chapter 26, verse 3, dwell in this land. God speaks to him, and I will be with you. I will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham, your father. So God blessed him in his business, not just as a spiritual man, but as a businessman and as a man who had common sense that was able to establish his as a legacy for his generations to come, which is part of our legacy today. Secondly, what about the woman in Proverbs? In Proverbs 31, verse 13, it says, she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. In other words, she sold and made products and sound investments. There's nothing wrong with women being in business. There's nothing wrong with women being in business. I mean, come on. It's a bit, oh, gee. All right, again, Proverbs 31:18. She perceives that her merchandise is good and a lamp does not go out by night. In other words, she's working 24/7 to make this thing happen. I don't know what the husband's doing, but I know she's working really hard. In fact, it says in verse 24, she's making linen garments and selling them. I mean, while he's trying to earn a living, and probably there's a drought in the land, she's making money. And what about Paul? Paul wrote most of the New Testament, was trained as a Jewish lawyer, and later became an entrepreneur by making and selling tents. He was a business owner. In Acts 18, verse 3, so because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them, which is Aquila and Priscilla, and worked, for by occupation they were tent makers. He chose to run his own business for one word, flexibility. If you're in ministry, you can run a business as well as a church. You can do that. Acts chapter 16, verse 4 speaks of a woman again. Says, now a certain woman named Lydia heard us. She was a seller of purple from the city of Thyatira who worshipped God. The Lord opened her heart to heed the things spoken by Paul. Here's a woman, a seller of purple. We know that purple represents royalty, but back then it had to do with idolatry. There's a whole story behind that. But she was a businesswoman. I'll tell you, pastors should be praying, God, bring business people into our church because they have finance. They have knowledge and leadership skills that can be applied. So secondly, what is the challenge? Well, the challenge is when we fail to put God at the center of our work, it leaves a vacuum. And that's when you and I are vulnerable to be tempted to greed. We're vulnerable to be tempted to covetousness. We're vulnerable to be tempted to carnality. And it leaves our lives wide open. And so that's why I say you get a common sense, business sense, and spiritual sense. You're going to mix these three together and ask yourself some really good questions. Like firstly, what is the purpose of business? Well, ours is to glorify God. I had a man come to me. We were at a dinner function, and I hadn't seen him for years. He was an old street preacher. I'm an old street preacher. And he was doing photography. And we were just talking. He said, what am I doing? I told him about our business. He was blown away. He couldn't believe that we'd have so many workers. And then he made this comment. He says, well, I prefer to do what I'm doing. I said, what's that? And he says, I'm a YouTuber and a photographer. I'm a sole trader. Oh, okay. And he says, I like it that way because I don't have to worry about employing other people. Well, you know what? When we built our business, we have others in mind. And we love it when we can employ people and give them a job and a good job, and they can be a blessing to us and we can be a blessing to them. So another question is, what does a robust Monday morning faith look like? Do you still get out of bed and pray? I get out of bed every morning. My day starts at 5:30 in the mornings. I'm too busy to get out of bed later in the day and pray. I'm up early, but you know what? I plan to go to bed early. You're not going to get up early if you're going to bed 11 o'clock at night. You want to get up early and spend the morning devotion with God. I still do that. I've been doing it nearly all my spiritual life. I get up early. I have a shower, do what everyone else does. Make sure the coffee's there, have coffee, go down to the lounge room, and I'm in there praying, reading the Bible, and laying it all out. And I can pray about things about work and so on. And so it's a good start. Okay, what are the ethical dimensions for a Christian in business? These are really good questions. But the main question I think is really important, the biggest challenge, is God the center of your business? Now, let me just say this. Well, we're saved, we've been saved a long time. We don't own a Christian business. We are Christians that run a business. So there's a difference. Because people get caught up on who you're going to employ. Well, they've got to be a Christian. Some of the worst workers you can get are Christians. I'm not afraid to say that. And so we employ a lot of different, we do have even Muslim people work for us. And they're good workers. We have people who are atheists that work for us, and they're still good workers. We did have a lady who was a witch. That just didn't work. That just didn't work. And so that doesn't work. But people know what we stand for. We don't hide it. We're not embarrassed. But we don't force our faith on anyone. But I'll tell you what, we have a lot of influence. I fight, 600 plus workers and over 1,000 clients. So we're having a lot of influence. And so you've got to really keep God as the center of your business. I like what the former Dutch Prime Minister, Abraham Kuyper, put it this way: there is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine. So this is the important part. I want you to hear this third point, because I want to talk about God owns my business. I was walking one morning, as I do, I get up, have coffee, first thing in the morning, coffee, got to have it. And then I pray, and then I take our dogs for a walk before I go to work. And I was walking through the park that we have near our house, and I was thinking about business. I was listening to a bit of a podcast, which we all do nowadays, easier than reading. And God began to speak to me because I was worried about a few things that are going on at work. And God very clearly said, what are you worried about? And I said, well, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. And God says, you don't need to worry because this is my business. And I stopped. I literally stopped, went, okay. And I said, yes, it is your business. And I said, but God, I need your wisdom. I need your help in this. And I'll tell you, when you understand it's God's business and you keep him the center, God will bless it. He will bless it so much. So I'm pastoring a mega church. That's what I'm doing. A large church of 500 people. Maybe it's not a mega church, but 500, 600 plus people. I lean my pastoral skills into them. And I live a life of exampleship and godly leadership, and I understand the influence that God has because it belongs to him. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord, not for men. So here are a few principles that will help you. How many want to be a spiritual entrepreneur? Oh, just a couple of. What are you doing here? All of you, good. Okay, this will help you. Number one, God owns it all. As a business owner, it's easy to think you're the boss. So when people meet me, you can go to our website and have a look at it. It's completecare with a K, one word, .com.au, and there's a little video. And every time I introduce myself to people, it's the same as what I did today. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the CEO. I'm the guy married to the boss. And everyone laughs. Everyone laughs, but you know what I'm reminding myself is I'm not the boss. And I'm not really saying Linda's the boss. I'm saying God's my boss. He's the one who really owns it all. So I put him first in Psalms 50 verse 10, for every beast of the forest is mine and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. It's all his. Everything you own belongs to God just as you belong to him. So that's the mindset you need to approach and run your business. God, this is your business. And this is going to succeed or fail to the glory of you. The second thing is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This can make you... I'll tell you what, if you do this, you're ahead of the curve. You're in front of every other business because a lot of people make promises and they break them. I call them empty promises and false hope. It's a bit like pastoring a church, isn't it? You have someone come to your church and they say, oh, Pastor, I love this church. It's the first time I've been here. I'm going to tithe here. In fact, I'm a business person. I'm going to put a lot of money in here. And you never see them again. False hope, empty promises. All right, so... if you are a business owner, the golden rule and the principles found in Matthew 7, verse 12 is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what does that mean? Well, it means providing a helpful and good quality product or service at a fair price. It means treating your customers or clients politely and kindly. You know, where there was a question that Pastor Jeff was asked about employing people. And he spoke about culture and onboarding. When we employ someone, we employ them not based upon their faith. We employ them based upon their values, not even their skills. Skills, we can train people. We can teach people how to do a job, but I can't teach you values. And if you don't have the values that we have as a company, which is Christian values like kindness, then you shouldn't be working for us. And if the only value you have is money, you won't last. And usually within a 3-month probation period, you're not going to last a distance. You won't stay if that is your priority, money. Because kindness, things like kindness is very valuable. Empathy, they're Christian values. So do unto others, addressing customers when they complain in a fair and honest and timely manner. We're very prompt. We respond very quickly. Paying your employees or contractors a fair wage and treating them all with respect. Whether you think they deserve it or not, it doesn't matter if you think they don't deserve your respect, because respect isn't about them, it's about you. It's about who you are. I respect people because it's about who I am. It's my value. I want to be respected, so I'm going to respect them regardless. Regardless. Truth in advertising and marketing. Tell the truth. Don't try and if you over-exaggerate your promises, you're going to let your clients down. And you're going to fail in your business. Don't promise what you can't do. Paying your bills when they're due. That's really important. One thing, it doesn't matter how big you get or how little you are. When it says 7 days notice, you need to have it paid within 7 days. Boom, by the date. Do you hear me? By the date, get it done, because they're relying on you to pay their bills. Keep your promises. You make a promise, you keep it. We had a situation where a lady rang us and she had a complaint. She was going to leave our company, our services. We're no longer going to be able to provide services for her. What happened is one of our workers was running late because she's at another client who gave her a hard time, so she's running late. And they were dependent on her turning on time, and it had happened a few times. And so what happens is she pulled the services out, said, oh, you're no longer going to be caring for my husband anymore. And I heard about all this. And I was horrified because that's not how we build our company. So I rang her as the owner and the CEO and the guy married to the boss. I rang her and I apologized. And I use this word, it's totally unacceptable what happened. We expect our workers to be there on time, if not early. And I apologized. I say, and what we're going to do, so this never happens again to you, is we're going to put a team together. We're going to call it our rapid response team. And that means we have a care worker, or a caregiver as you call them here in America, in every office. And if a shift gets dropped because a worker can't get there on time or whatever, we'll have someone who can get there on time. It changed our whole business. 6 months later, guess what? She came back. And not only did she come back, she's really happy with our company because we're now keeping our promises. It's really important to keep your promises from the top right down to the bottom, to the care worker, the caregiver. You've got to keep your promise. If you say you're going to be there, you be there. I use 2 words that are really important. One is, I expect. It's a good word to use in ministry too. I expect that you will ... turn up on time. I expect that you will not abandon a shift. I expect, and I use these words, and then I use another word, because in Australia, you can't fire people. You can't say, you're sacked. You got to go through a whole rigmarole to get rid of people. And so I say, that is unacceptable. So 2 words, expect and unacceptable. Unacceptable is a powerful word because there's a lot of ... to that. We're going to performance manage you. We're going to make life difficult if you're not going to do your job. But it's in our best interest you do better than what you're doing, and we invest in people. So the third thing is take action and work hard. James 2:17 says, so also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. As a Christian entrepreneur, faith doesn't take the place of setting goals, creating action plan, then taking action. To run a business successfully, you have to invest a lot of time and a lot of money. And you're not going to get results you desire if you don't put in the work. If you're not going to work hard, they're not going to work hard. We, in our business, when we started, I was a sales rep, I was a scheduler, I was the one who answered the phone, administration. What else was I? And sometimes I was a caregiver. I remember running out and doing shifts. If we couldn't get someone to do it, I'd go out and do it. I remember driving an hour to do a 30-minute shift because I wanted to make sure that client got looked after. Now we have whole departments doing that. I have a scheduling department. I have a sales department. We have a marketing department. Linda used to do a lot in compliance and the back end of things. We have a compliance department. We have heads of those departments that didn't get there without us doing all of it and working hard. So a lot of the principles of biblical entrepreneurship are simple and common sense principles, but many people fail in the application of it. Here's a quote. You need to have common sense, here we go, business sense, and spiritual sense. And you know, when I was pastoring, I had a hard time bringing the business sense into my church. But now I've been out of pastoring for a while, and I'm going back into pastoring again. Now I understand all 3 of them are really important. Because if you don't have good business sense in the church, you're a disaster. And no matter what you say, it's a recipe for failing. You've got to have business sense. You've got to have and common sense, which is the glue, as well as spiritual sense. Even in business, you have spiritual sense. There are times we've had spiritual warfare in our business. And we've closed the door and prayed against it. And we've had to do that. And there have been very specific times. And God just really helps us. Number 4, be wary of debt. Okay, go back to our front scripture, says count the cost. What man who's going to build a tower doesn't sit down and count the costs? Be wary of debt. There's good debt, bad debt. Good debt is when you're investing to start our business. We had to do that. We had to get a loan to be able to start the business. But we paid that off as soon as we were making money. And bad debt is when you just keep running your credit cards through the roof all the time. That's really bad debt. So be careful, all right? You need to have a plan. You need to have an accountant. You need to have a financial advisor. You need to have as many people as you can that are going to help you. And number 5, what that means is you need to plan and strategize. So Luke 14:26, for which of you, again, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the costs, wherever is enough to complete it. There's an old house in an area called Barossa Valley near my home. And there's this house there, it's only half built. It's been that way for 40 years. because the person never finished the building. Didn't really count the cost. The expenses went up and they couldn't finish it. Right now, because the economy in Australia, a lot of builders are falling over. They're going broke. And there's a lot of buildings in a particular town on the York Peninsula called Wallaroo. There's all these townhouses that are half built will not be finished because the cost was never really counted. You've got to count the cost. It's going to cost you to go in business. But if you've got God with you, He will help you. Have a plan, have a strategy, and be wise about it. One of the things I really pray for every day, say, God, you said in James that if we ask for wisdom, you wouldn't laugh at us. You'd give us wisdom from heaven. And I pray for that every day.